A famous author, Anton Chekhov, once said, "Don't tell me the moon is shining. Show me the glint of light on broken glass." He knew well that when you describe a scene, it is better to use imagery, to use word pictures, to engage the reader in a scene. Ultimately, as a very popular piece of advice, showing rather than telling is something that you want to consider, just like a tip of write what you know or write every day. It's challenging, but not impossible, especially if you know what it really means. So, what is it? This maxim or piece of advice causes a lot of questions. How do I show without directly telling? It's important though, and if you want your writing to get noticed, it's vital that you master this tool. It pulls the reader directly into the scene. When you were a child, I imagine that at some point in school you participated in an activity called show and tell. Perhaps it was a toy, perhaps it was a piece of art, perhaps it was an artifact from someone's home, but the greatest part of this experience was always when a classmate showed you his cool stuff. No one just wants to be told there's a robot at home. The audience wants a demonstration. When you tell your audience, you're stealing the opportunity for the reader to discover for himself the world you've experienced. I have a very fond memory of when my oldest son, Mathis, went to school and forgot about show and tell. He immediately went to the coat closet and sold the idea that his orange coat was something to rave about. He showed it with confidence. He emptied the pockets, he spun it around from front to back, and these little kindergartners were so impressed with an ordinary coat simply because he sold it with words and descriptions. When attempting to show, not tell, here are a few tips that will assist you. Write with specific details. This is the power of words and the choices that you use to describe a scene. Instead of naming an emotion, like anger, for example, choose to show a picture that the reader can imagine in his or her mind's eye. His face was flushing, his throat was tightening, his voice was rising while he slammed his fist. The idea is that obviously the guy is angry, but you're showing it with a more descriptive and specific detail. When showing, not telling, attempt to write with an engaging sensory description. Keep in mind you've got 5 senses on your body for a reason. How does the character experience the sight, the smell, the taste, the sound, and the tactile touch of what they're experiencing in life? Any words that evoke the fresh smell of coffee, or the cool breeze on your skin, or the rustling sounds of leaves at your feet make it more engaging and interesting. Ultimately, you want to make a difference with your writing. In fact, you probably want to do more than that. You want to nudge the world in a way that tantalizes, motivates, accelerates. These are strong verbs that show exactly how someone is affecting. Think about how you would walk to the principal's office. Did you just find out you won a scholarship? Well, then you would eagerly get to that principal's office to find out about the reward. Did you just find out that you got caught for skipping class? Then you probably hesitantly are going to walk or delay to that principal's office. Use strong action verbs to describe behavior. Showing dramatizes. It helps to paint a picture that is active, that is engaging, that is more of a playful or interesting way to describe. Telling simply summarizes. It's the difference between a teacher who lists important points of a story and one who acts it out for you. In contrast to telling readers what happened, keep in mind that telling just spells things out. It's boring, and it doesn't evoke a character's joy or anger or passion or emotion. It simply just tells the reader what to think. Take a look at these examples. What is more interesting? I missed the bus. Okay, but why? But how? And what do you feel about it? I raced down the road, wildly waving my hands and yelling, "Stop! Stop!" But the bus traveled on down the road without stopping. We can feel the exasperation. We know the panic. You don't just say, "I missed the bus." We want to know the emotion or the scene around the situation. Here's another example. What's more interesting? I was scared as I walked towards the haunted house. Or, the broken windows and creaking hinges made me tremble as I slowly crossed the shadowed yard towards the dilapidated house. Now, obviously, I changed my voice as I was speaking that, but when you're describing a creepy house, you want to make sure that your listeners can visualize it in their heads. You weren't just scared in an ordinary haunted house situation, but you've got visuals of the dilapidated, broken down structure and why it does creep you out. This is showing, not telling. Now, this is a common observation. When you're reading something famous and you eventually get to the movies to watch that interpretation, the book is usually better than the movie. Keep in mind that the theater of a reader's mind is actually more powerful than anything Hollywood could recreate. Your imagination, your interpretation is more exciting, vivid, and personal. Well written books trigger the theater in your mind and give you that mental visual image. Your writing could do the same if you master showing rather than telling. Ultimately, here are the takeaway tips. When you write, use specific details. You want to make sure that you help paint the picture of the scene, help paint the picture of the emotions by showing them, not telling them. You'll create a dynamic scene if you do so. Use the five senses. If you can, while you're describing, imagine you are there. What does it look like? What are particular textures or colors? What does it feel like? The weather, the lighting. What does it sound like? The background. What does it smell like? Even taste like? This kind of sensory language can really prove to be a dynamic style of writing. Ultimately, you want to use strong verb choices. These are active verbs that show life is happening. And when you use these active verbs, you are using how someone describes or someone lives or someone acts in a way that's vivid and specific to the scene and emotion to it. Finally, don't forget to show what you know with the Better Way exit ticket. You can do it, and there is always a better way.